Hello, and welcome to the Thinking Elixir podcast, where we cover the news of the community and learn from each other. My name is Mark Erickson.
And I'm David Bernheisel.
Let's jump into the news. First up, just wanted to circle back. Elixir 1.19.0 RC0 was released. We mentioned that last episode, but there is some more additional information we want to make sure people were aware of. In particular, there is a mix format -- migrate update. We talked about a deprecation where you can update a struct using that special struct update syntax where you're using curly brackets and the struct name, and then we talked about how that was changing. And that was probably the biggest change that people would feel, just because it might be sprinkled all throughout your code base. Well, what we learned and what we wanted to pass on is that mix format -- migrate was updated to autofix those deprecated struct update syntax changes. So it makes it really easy to just get that all done in one commit.
And just a refresher of what's in Elixir 1.19, what's new in it, why you want it, what's the good stuff, the secret sauce. It's additional type checking of protocol dispatch and implementations. So that's good. Maybe one that you're more likely to hit is type checking and inference of anonymous functions. So that's pretty interesting. That's probably gonna find some bugs of mine. And generally making things a lot faster. So faster compile times in larger projects, but also parallel compilation of dependencies. And Elixir 1.19 will be the first release that has open chain certification, which is pretty nice.
Yes. When your app breaks in production, you want to quickly understand and fix it, not sift through logs for the next hour. Well, that's where Honeybadger comes in. Honeybadger notifies you of errors, outages, and performance issues as they occur and helps you respond instantly when your system goes down. When you need to dig deeper, Honeybadger's advanced query engine helps you reach into your logs and grab just the information you need. With error tracking, performance and uptime monitoring, log management, and support for over 10 languages, Honeybadger is the best tool to gain real-time insights into your application's health and performance. Best of all, it's free to get started and setup takes less than 5 minutes. Be sure to bookmark honeybadger.io. That's honeybadger.io. And thanks to Honeybadger for sponsoring this episode.
All right, well, speaking of language updates, Gleam 1.11 was also released. Gleam, if you haven't heard of it, type-safe and scalable language for the Erlang virtual machine and JavaScript runtimes. JavaScript right there. Okay. We got a couple of links that talks about what's going on in 1.11, but here's some high points here. Gleam compiled JavaScript now runs 30% faster. Get yourself your free performance winnings. And then, of course, Gleam, renowned for its incredible, DevX experience anyway, also has now more testing tools provided by Gleam itself. Yep. And there's a lot more, but we got links to the changelog where you can find that out. But pretty cool, 30%. If you're in that crowd, was it Lustre, I think, right?
Yeah, they have Lustre's their front end.
They're probably going to really appreciate that 30%. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a blog post that we have that links to the announcement where they break down a lot more of the changes and what they mean with examples. So you can check that out. And next up, there's a new ElixirLang blog post titled Elixir Outreach Stipend for Speakers and Trainers. So we learned that Dashbit, Oben, and the EEF are teaming up to trial a new marketing or outreach program called Elixir Outreach. Currently, the goal is to run this for 12 months and just see how it goes. The goal is that they're going to be providing funds to Elixir community members who want to present on Elixir and Erlang to other ecosystems and communities in a way that's respecting Elixir ecosystem values. From the announcement, it says, we will provide funds to community members to speak in person about anything related to Elixir and the Erlang VM, and that this fund will cover hotel and transportation costs up to $700. And they said if it's going to exceed that amount, still reach out. It's their first time running this program. They're refining the budget. I totally encourage you to check out the blog post because there are other restrictions and guidelines, things about like minimum audience size requirements for them to be considered, things like that. But honestly, this is great. This is really about growing the pie. The more people, the more companies using Elixir, the better it is for the community. So if you, dear listener, are active or participating in other communities outside of Elixir, and you'd like to present a talk at a conference where you can share how you're using Elixir in some way that is valuable to you or how it can help the other members in your community, then definitely check this out and see if you can be part of that program.
I think this is an amazing decision here. I felt like this for the past, like, I don't know, like 5 years or something. Like, I love going to ElixirConf. I love going to these, other big Elixir-centric conferences. But on the other hand, I really feel like I got to get to those other ones so we can talk about it. We're not going to grow if we don't talk about it with people that don't know about Elixir.
A lot of the early Elixir adoption that came from the Ruby community was partly because José had been active in the Ruby community, so people knew him. He had creds. But then it was also, he was speaking at Ruby conferences talking about, check out what the Erlang VM can do. And we're going to make something that feels very Ruby-like. So it was that direct outreach, which was just part of very natural at that time for José to do that. But yeah, we can be doing that too, especially if you're coming new to Elixir, you're already currently active in another community, and you're seeing some value that Elixir is bringing you. That's a great thing to share.
Yeah, there's probably the next couple of years, the big conferences are probably going to be like AI oriented or something.
Yeah.
We got to represent, we got to get up there and like show off Kino. We got to show off Bumblebee, Axon. We got to show off, LangChain. You got your library there, right? Like we got to represent. Otherwise they won't know. Everything will continue to be in Python. Or we could talk about Livebook Fine, Anyway.
Right. Yeah.
All right, next up, there's a couple more videos out there about Elixir. We got a little bit more ElixirConf US 2024 videos. So 16 new videos are available. We got a link to the playlist. Some of the ones that are out there now is talk by Zach Daniel about the power of declarative design. Very nice, by the way. I definitely recommend that one. Tyler Young's talk about more testing and fewer tests. Highly recommend. All these I recommend. They were all really good. Sasha Urich about folding the umbrella. Shannon and Parker Selbert about our concurrency superpowers and how they use that in Oben, the job processing library. Wojtek Mach about rapid prototyping in Elixir. Just showcasing mix install and Livebook and all that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, really, really pretty cool things. Lots of stuff. All those videos are now published on the playlist on YouTube, so we got a link to that, so you can go watch that. But there's more. It's not just ElixirConf US.
Yeah, there was another ElixirConf EU video that was published. This is Zach Daniel's Ash AI launch. And at the time of this recording, that video is not in the conference playlist on YouTube, so you can get the link in the show notes. But it's great to see more and more conference talks available, especially for those of us who maybe couldn't take time out because of family or work or whatever to go to a conference, or even to dedicate the time to watch it virtually. So as it comes out like this, lets a lot of us catch up and just kind of marinate our brains in these topics over time. And that's great. I love it.
Yeah, Ash AI in particular this is a really good one to watch, right? You may not be in the AI world, right? This may be something that you're still an observer about. I promise you, within the next 10 years, even short of that, I'm almost positive. But within the next 10 years, software development, along with a lot of other industries, I know I'm repeating what everyone else is saying at this point. No, I don't think there's a different message at this point. Work is going to look a lot different because of AI. Right. And so Ash AI in particular is about Ash, right? But it's about how our work can work with AI elements out there. Ash AI, the demo on that is pretty impressive as well. You get a lot for free, right? You've already declaratively, stated all of your resources and things you can do. And so Ash AI just feeds that like honey to LLMs and they eat it up and they get good context windows at that point. So it makes them, that much more useful, in my opinion. Definitely recommend catching up on AI stuff, and Ash AI is a good, impressive library that showcases what it can do. All right. Next up, Noora. I think I'm saying that right. Noora. Noora. A design system that works with Elixir and LiveView was open sourced. So we've got a link out to the blog post that talks a lot more about this. If you haven't heard of this, here's a quote from their site. It's a complete, accessible design system for Phoenix LiveView with Figma files and ready-to-use components.
Wow.
All right. Yeah, lots of front-end oriented like design things to make LiveView look good. So we know that LiveView is now generating new projects with Daisy UI. Noora also seems to be a good, I think I saw that it was Tailwind-based as well. There is a way maybe it's not Tailwind based, but it does have all of the Figma, the components. It looks like a proper, storybook. That's the word I was looking for. It does have a proper storybook of showcasing all of the components out there. So it looks very nice, very well developed, and now it's open source. So if you're in the market for one, go check that one out.
And next up, Phoenix LiveView is likely to support for comprehensions in HEEX templates. So you could already do like a for style key where you could iterate over like a list item and get a whole bunch of list items. So you could already do that. But what they're talking about doing is a little bit different here. So to make this change work, each element from the loop needs to have a key attribute for change tracking. As David, you pointed out, that feels a little bit more like React. But really what's going on when you look at what's inside the for comprehension, what this does, I was like, when I was reading this, it's like trying to grok it. It's like, oh, this is very different. It takes the body of what's inside that for comprehension and it turns it into a live component.
Yeah.
And it becomes more efficient with change tracking and optimizing the payload over the wire for those changes to get replicated down. And so they need that key attribute to be able to help make this all happen. So currently this is a PR that's open, hasn't been merged yet, but that's a really interesting idea. It's something that you wouldn't feel necessarily by looking at the template, the code. You're not having to write these live components. It's generating that for you so it can take a more optimized path that it already has. Yeah. So very cool.
It's like LiveView is going to write LiveView for you. That's pretty cool.
We recently talked about some of the changes they were doing in LiveView and how you're getting macro behavior in the HEEX templates. And that's where this is. We're seeing something from that now.
I wasn't sure if that was a macro-based thing, but
I assume it is. Okay, I should clarify that. I assume it is just because of what they're doing. But
because the brand of crazy that's in here, yeah, there must be some macro shenanigans. Definitely macro shenanigans. I don't know if it is macro components though. That's the thing. Well, moving on. Lua. It's just called Lua, but it's the Elixir library that wraps up Lua URL, not the Lua language all on its own, not that thing, but the Lua library, the one that Dave Lucia, good friend Dave Lucia, is maintaining right now, has updated to version 0.3, which now includes support for some guards. So very nice. Here are those guards. This will make sense if you know Lua. And as a professional NeoVim config changer, I know Lua too much and not enough at the same time. It's weird. But here are the guards. It is table, is user data, is Lua function, or func for short. Oh, that's a missed opportunity. He should have called that is Lua fun, and is Earl fun, and then is MFA. Those are all the new guards in the Lua package here, which is pretty nice. Is table. Tables, man. Tables in Lua are so weird. I don't like them. I don't like them at all. Tables are both arrays and dictionaries, and arrays are not really arrays. They are tables with indexes as the key. It's weird. So if you pop something, you're not popping out of array. You're clearing that key. And so it's like, it's just weird. It's so weird. And I only know that because of NeoVim. Thanks, NeoVim, for the pain.
And next up, Brian Cardarella of Dockyard has shared that they released a new HEX package library called WebSocket Dist. So we've got a link to where it was announced and explained a little bit more behind the scenes. So what is it? The GitHub description says Erlang distribution over WebSockets. Okay, what does that mean? When we talk about distribution here, we're talking about how two different running Beam instances, these nodes, how they're connected together at runtime and how they form a networked cluster. So that's what we're talking about with distribution. And the default distribution in the Beam is a TCP connection. And the Beam comes with a daemon out of the box called EPMD that handles this. And WebSockets also run on TCP, but they also have additional protocol wrappers around it. When Brian was asked about the use case behind the library, he explained it was mostly just exploratory stuff for LiveView native that didn't pan out. Figured someone may find value in it. So they open sourced it. I thought that was really cool. You know, when you've done a whole lot of deep R&D and you realize this is something really cool and interesting, we're not actually going to need it and go in that direction and use this, but someone might like this. just to actually release it instead of just shelving it, That's cool. I just appreciate that. So if that sounds like something interesting to you about running Beam connections over WebSockets, you should go check that out.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking back to all my repos that I did not open source.
Many of those.
You don't want to look through my garbage cans. I promise. Yeah. Okay. That is pretty cool though. Yeah, Dockyard, Brian Crowderella, the group over there, they pioneer and try so much stuff. It's boggling sometimes, right? They're doing LiveView native, crazy in itself. But then all the things that has to touch, like what the problem they're trying to solve here. EPMD is just not a thing they can do on iPhones, right? Like they have to figure out another solution for solving distribution, over alternative things, and they have to deal with it. And then all the stuff they did with like Lumen / Firefly a long time ago, like they were trying to rewrite the Beam, like so much stuff. I have to imagine like this is only a peek into the things that they've had to throw away. All right, last up, wrapping up, new Dashbit blog post about Tidewave. So Tidewave has been announced for a while, but there was no blog post that accompanied it. Now the blog post is out, so you get a lot more background context of what purpose it serves, what it's trying to do, what its goals are, all that stuff. We got a couple of links to it, but it's dashbit.co /blog/announcing-Tidewave. You'll find it there. Here's some high points on it. José Valim and the Dashbit team created a blog post about the release of Tidewave, the MCP server that runs in your application. So that's what Tidewave is. But what it's doing is that it's connecting AI agents to your running application instead of just static code, LSP-based kind of stuff. Side note, I'm still waiting for an MCP that connects to LSP servers. That's good. I think that would be really helpful. Unlike existing AI coding tools, though, that only parse your code base as text, right? Tidewave is running the MCP server within your web application, giving it access via MCP tools to logs, database queries, traces, exceptions, live connections. Like there's a tool in there that has it list, live view processes. You can see background jobs. I suppose that means processes, OTP term of process, and even the REPL, so they can like execute things on your IEX terminal. It
was fun. Recently, I was using Cursor AI and developing code, and Cursor's writing some of this code. It's writing tests. It runs tests, but it's like, well, let me just check that to make sure it's actually running the way I think it is. And it's using this MCP server to call into the runtime and eval like you would do in IEX. Like you would do it there. The AI is doing it and checking that it's behaving the way it thinks it should, according to the requirements you're providing and stuff like that. So very cool, just being able to see that it's, just able to easily do that.
Yeah, and they're branding wise, they're kind of wrapping all that up to say runtime intelligence, which is very accurate. Yeah. I think I said this last time, but Tidewave, this is at tidewave.ai as well. You'll find it there. But I wondered if they used AI to generate their website. And like come up with some of the marketing speak here. And if they came up with runtime intelligence here, I'm like, that's accurate. That nails it, I think. All right. So what makes this particularly interesting is José's vision, getting back to the blog post, José's vision for AI augmentation rather than replacement. So he's calling it the productivity zone concept, right? Where AI doesn't need to be perfect. It's just good enough to give developers a leg up in areas where they're a little less skilled. So ultimately aiming to make every developer a 0.1x developer. Just kidding. That's fine. Ultimately aiming to make every developer a 10x developer, as the old saying goes. Yep. I definitely can feel that. I still have to even with Tidewave, I'm trying to get into the groove of using this often. There's a lot of tuning you got to do. And I'm using Claude Code at this point. So I haven't committed anything to my code base. I'm still learning, the concept of how to give the AI memory, right? Yeah. That's kind of stuff. And just a hot tip for everyone out there, Tidewave is really helpful and gives a lot of tools to do things better. But for your code base, you're still going to have to tell your AI agent stuff. It's not going to be able to figure out all the things on your own.
Yeah. And really the key there is there's a concept called rules, where you're defining rules that are per project. So you're saying in this project, these are the important things. This is an important thing to understand. Lots of times what will happen is when the AI keeps making the same mistake over and over because it's, it doesn't learn, right? It's not being trained off of your experience. So when in another session, it's making the same mistake it made last time. I'm like, all right, we need to create a rule for this. You need to know how to do this right. And so I will actually use the AI to help write the rule. But
nice. Okay.
Yeah, because like I've had to tell it, no, don't do it like this. Do it like this. And we get it all nice and tuned right. It's okay. Now write a rule for what we just figured out here. And then
that's interesting. Okay, let's imagine this. These are our kids. Hey, can you imagine just walking around like, okay, new rule, none of this. But then you're like telling your kid, like, okay, now take out your rule notebook, wite this down. Now,
yes, exactly. It becomes like a Calvin and Hobbes comic where you're just making up the rules as you go.
Yeah, really. The problem with kids though is that they won't look at the rule book.
That's right.
Just throw it away. All right, rounding out the blog post though is the tool also reinforces, and this goes without saying, local host development isn't really going anywhere. Of course not. Working with your local setup, is sometimes a lot more preferable rather than forcing you into remote environments, causing you to have to worry about things like everything's a platform as a service, stuff like that. API key, you got to share sensitive API keys with things. I don't know. Gets a little iffy. Don't want to get a little too wanton with all of our secrets. Already nervous about that enough. If I could summarize this with David AI, a lot of my intelligence is artificial. The Tidewave is amazing. Does give you runtime intelligence. Love that. And I have the same perspective as Jose, that this is really your assistant, your private pair programmer. Mm-hmm. You generally have to treat it like a junior developer, and you do need to like manage their memory for them, or tell them to write their own memory, but you got to actually say that. It just reiterated for me all the understood things that you have in your brain that you just know when you're writing a thing, do this, don't do that. Mm-hmm. You got to write that down now, because if you don't, these tools are only going to continue making those mistakes. I told I experimented one time. I told it to rewrite this Phoenix controller from a non-LiveView to a LiveView. And it got really far, but here's the mistakes it made. I have lots of other LiveViews out there, and it copied terrible patterns from those old LiveViews that I had not updated yet. And so I have to make a rule that says, this is the example for my code base for a LiveView. Use this pattern here, and or the documentation, from hex docs or something. But when it's going to like scan, other LiveViews and like try to, which I'm not even sure how it did that, to be honest, but it did. It found old junk out there and it copied it. I'm like, no, don't do that. So I don't know. What'd you think?
Yeah, I did just want to follow up. When I'd mentioned before, some time ago, back when we were talking about Tidewave first being released, I had said, yeah, but it keeps disconnecting for me. Like when I would register the MCP server with my cursor, then what would happen was, as the application keeps breaking because I'm making changes and it doesn't compile, the editor would lose its connection to my MCP server. And cursor would just say, well, because I've lost my connection, I'm just going to turn it off. It would never come back. I just wanted to pass along, just because I had never touched on it again, that the MCP proxy GitHub project solves this problem, and it does it really well. So the proxy, they have two different versions. They have a Rust version and a Python version. The proxy just sits there running, and it makes the constant connection to your editor. And then it is okay with the MCP server going up and down as things happen and change. So the editor thinks it's always there. And so everything's good. Everything's great. It just works. So just wanted to pass along that. I have a link in the show notes to the instructions on how to install the MCP proxy, and it's on their GitHub page, and how you actually register that.
Fantastic stuff. We're entering a new era, folks. I don't want to be too dramatic here, but Tidewave is an MCP server, and there is so much activity out there right now creating MCP servers for various things here and there. Yeah. You're going to have major interfaces for the internet, right? HTTP, obviously, and all the related things like WebSockets, whatever. HTTP in the sense of like HTML. I guess that's a major entry point. APIs, as we've, the various shapes that they come in. So JSON-based REST endpoints or GraphQL, that kind of stuff. You got general APIs for just things to consume. But those both have a common. HTML is for humans to read. APIs are generally humans creating automation around, raw data. Mm-hmm. We're entering into another layer here that's going to be just as important, right? MCP servers. MCP servers is going to be that new API layer, but it's for totally non-humans.
It's for AI consumption.
Yeah. And so for the past, 15 years of Google being around, the thing is to get noticed out there, you got to be in the search results. So you get into this realm of like search engine optimization. You got specific tags that are meant for machine readers. That's the robots, the crawlers, stuff like that. But MCP servers, they don't care about all that. I guess that becomes like the fallback stuff, like regular HTML, of course, and they're going to be able to consume that just as much. But MCP servers are like tailored for that to make the quality much better. So I think from a business perspective, you're in the business of rendering stuff and providing services on the internet. MCP servers are going to be a new way for things to access your site. People may not go to, myapp.com to go find stuff. Maybe they'll do that to sign up for an account or something through some other organic means. But what might need to be a thing is like the way that people are accessing the web now is through Google's new search AI mode, which kind of searches the web for you, and summarizes or, all these other LLMs that kind of like crawl the web for you, but then also have configuration for all these MCP servers to, make the quality of their results and their conversations better. I'm still a bit fuzzy on how it's actually going to all end up working out, but this is where I'm placing MCP servers right now. It is going to be a very important part of the web for interaction through LLM agents, which is more and more so important. Like the scale of usage is mind-boggling, right? Like the world out there is using this stuff at this point, and the momentum I think is too much to ignore at this point. I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir, but I do advise developers out there for your careers, you at least need to take a look at it. To put it gently.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us next time on Thinking Elixir.